Hey guys, welcome to Storytime with Jester. As you can see, I am not in my Jester's outfit. It is December, and this is my Georgia Claws outfit. So, like I said, welcome to Storytime with Jester. We are going to pick up where we left off last time at chapter 63. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in the beautiful land, and the fourth shall be far richer than them all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of darkness. A mighty king shall stand up, with a crown of gold. He shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided toward the 4 winds. For a portion of his kingdom shall be plucked up, even others on his borders. And he shall be strong, and one of his princes, and shall seek to unite with that holy land. But the prince of the covenant shall be given up to she that begat him. Out of a branch of her roots shall one stand up, and his estate shall be vile and wicked, and he shall work deceitfully and make leagues with those round about. He shall come with an army, and shall enter into the lands of the moon, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail, and shall also carry away captives into his own lands. Many shall stand up against him, but none shall succeed. The king of the moon shall be stirred up, and shall assemble a multitude of great forces. And one shall certainly come, that prince of the covenant, and shall come to the kingdom of the stars, to fulfill the agreement, yea, that holy covenant. And they shall join themselves together, 2 great sources of light, to do battle against that old one. And behold, there was a woman clothed in white. Virtuous was she, bearing a child. And behold, out of the ground came a dragon, its countenance ever changing as its color. Terrible was he. And all the heavens trembled beneath its feet. It waged war with all that was in the world, trampling underfoot everything in its path. Great power was given to the woman, and she smote the dragon, sending it from whence it came. And all the gods praised the woman, saying, Blessed is she who hath delivered us from our enemy. And behold, a woman with 4 horns on her head, who was sitting on top of many mountains, whose name was the great harlot, mother of evil, and with whom demons and all manner of foul creatures have committed fornication. At the base of the mountains was a great beast, which was and is not, but shall be, whose countenance and image I could not make out, but who had eternal enmity with the harlot. The harlot was clothed in black, and in one hand wielded a rod of iron, and in the other held chains, whose iron collars of fornication bound 3 beasts. The beast on the left was beautiful to behold in all its evilness. The one on the right was unlike anything I had ever seen. It worshipped the first beast, which was and is not, but shall be. In the middle stood a beast who wore a crown of gold, and who sat upon the moon. Of the 4 horns, the first was fair as a unicorn, yet slave to the night, whose rule was cut short by he who begat her. The second horn was wicked and full of deceit. Many a nation would fall to its armies, but to the great beast it was powerless because of the harlot. The other 2 horns appeared the same, but different. Red and yellow bolts shot forth from their eyes, striking down all they could see. Then there came up among them another little horn, unlike the others, and being first among them, who was slain by the great beast, which was and is not, but shall be. Behold, a woman sitting upon a multicolored beast, having 4 heads and 6 horns. And the woman was arrayed in black as if mourning, wearing a crown of silver and gold, and having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornications. And upon her forehead was a name written, The Mother of Harlots and Abominations of the World. And the woman was drunk with the blood of many. The beast is that which was and is not, but shall ascend out of the bowels of the world, and they which dwell in the world shall tremble when they behold the beast. And here in the is the mind that hath wisdom. The 4 heads are 4 mountains, on which the woman sitteth, and the 6 horns are 6 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings for a time with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the remnants of her seed. They shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Yea, they shall be purified and made white as snow. Behold, there was a woman clothed with a star, and the moon under her feet. Stubborn was she, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And behold, there appeared a great dragon, having 2 heads and 7 horns, and 6 crowns upon their heads. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to the gods and to their throne. But the woman was given 2 great owls with which to weaken the dragon. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. And I stood upon the lake, and saw a beast rise up out of the east, having 3 crowns, and the moon and stars under his feet. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the west, having 2 heads. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And power was given him over all kindred and tongues and nations. And the 2 beasts went up to make war with the dragon, that ancient of beasts, which was and is not, but shall be. The king of the north shall return, and set forth a multitude greater than the former. He shall set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom. A prince for his own behalf shall make leagues and raise armies, and move with such swiftness that the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he shall not prevail, nay, he shall be turned away. For out of the west shall come a small people, who shall forecast devices against him. Of his army many shall fall down slain. Then shall he turn his face toward the ford of his own land, but he shall be caught up and not be found. Andor opened his eyes and scanned the circle of green robes. They all just sat in their seats, blank stares, in awe of what they just heard. Finally, Bishop Laurent spoke. "That was everything you read from the book your last time here?" "Yes," Andor replied. "Since your last visit here," Bishop Laurent paused, and then continued, "there has been more." A look of shock came upon Andor's face. The bishop continued, "Would you—" He paused again, hesitant to ask, knowing full well what it was he would be asking. "We would like for you," he continued, then paused once more, "if you would be willing to read the new pages." Andor knew his response, but delayed in giving it as he scanned the faces of the bishops. Some had the look of hope, others trepidation, even fear. Finally, he gave his response in but one word: "Yes." Andor looked at the book of prophecies as it sat on the desk in Bishop Laurent's chambers. He but thought of what he wanted to read, and the book opened to the unread pages. The words began forming upon the page, and Andor read, "Behold, the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea, and the 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from another. The first was like porcelain, but with the strength of adamantine. Great was its thirst, eternally unquenchable, eternal guardian its fate. And behold, another beast, a second, like unto a hyena with a lion's head. After this, another, like a radiant star, bursting in all of its brilliance and watching over the darkness. And behold, even a 4th beast, like a nightmare, which had upon its back wings of a Pegasus. The wings of the 4th beast were plucked, causing the 2nd beast to lose its power. As concerning the other 2 beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. And yet a 5th beast shall arise, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 6 horns." Upon Andor reading the last word, the book closed on its own. A strange look crossed Andor's face as he came to the realization that somehow the dream he had with the ships and him defeating the entity in the graveyard had caused this prophecy to be written. Was this the case in all the prophecies? If so, he would have to somehow find out what the visions of the priests that caused the prophecies to be written were. But how? They were long dead. Not all, Bishop Lawrence said. Andor snapped a sharp look at the bishop. Forgive me, Bishop Lawrence said. I scanned your thoughts without permission. You said not all, Andor said. Not all the priests are dead? Correct, Lawrence answered. There is one, a mad hermit on the border of Pelandava and the steppes. He is the last living author of the book. Then, nodding towards Andor, Lawrence added, until now. Chapter 64. I'm sick of this place, Fizz exclaimed. I want to go home. The journey was starting to take its toll on the little gnome. The trip to the mountain was bad enough. He hated the cold. That's why he had left his clan in the Fagarass Mountains years ago and journeyed south to warmer climes. The worst, however, had been since entering the depths of the mountain itself. Unlike Mal, he was not suited to be enclosed so. He needed wide open spaces. The place reeked of wet dog to the point he thought that if he ever got out of this place, it would take him a month of scrubbing to get the smell out of his clothes. And his hat, his big, beautiful floppy wizard's hat, it was riddled with holes. Since entering the mountain, they had been ruthlessly harried by these little creatures that he could only describe as anemic midget lizard men. They were cowardly little maggots, never once entering melee with his group, always laying traps and firing arrows from the distance. So many arrows, and they seemed to have a propensity in targeting him over all the others in the group. Why? Was it his hat? Did they have some sick aggression to big hats? Maybe a grand wizard came to this mountain wearing a big floppy hat and wreaked havoc on them, so from that time on they hate floppy hats. That must be it. Their second favorite target has been the other mages in the group. Miranda, Sigrun, and Adara were all favorites of the little lizard freak's arrows. Oh, Adara. She fell to a black arrow. Well, the fletching was black. The arrow itself was poisoned. Thankfully for him, he had protected himself with a spell, rendering his skin as strong as stone. Those dreadful death bolts merely bounced off of him, causing no harm. Not so with his clothing, however. Oh, his big, beautiful floppy hat. Ulrich, Fizz called out to, tell me again why exactly we are here. Well, Ulrich replied, there are several. We mean to find the throne of the gods and ask for the return of Pedius and Veyril. But above all, we are searching for a dagger. Fizz halted in his tracks. A dagger? He replied, rather put off at the price that had been paid thus far for something as insignificant sounding as a mere dagger. Yes, Ulrich continued. While we were in Osnaburg, I did quite a bit of research in the libraries there, and much communing with my god. I learned a lot. Remember Flamehead? Ulrich continued, without waiting for a response. Well, it seems that he is in search of a trio of linked magical items, the rod that our dwarven friend here had stolen being the second of such. The three items individually have great evil powers, but when possessed together are amplified. At first I thought he was just acquiring power for himself. That was until I came across an old tome mentioning an ancient power that lay somewhere in slumber waiting to be awakened. The description of it and its temples bore an overwhelming resemblance to the place you and Mal described near your old clan in the Fagarass Mountains. It seems the items that Flamehead seeks are what are needed to awaken this evil power. So the third item is a dagger? Fizz surmised. No, Ulrich responded. An orb. Confused, Fizz asked, then why aren't we trying to find the orb before Flickerhair? I was instructed by an emissary of my god to seek out a dagger in a mountain that is far removed from mankind. So you brought us here, based on that? Fizz stated, incensed. All portends pointed here, Ulrich replied. I did not choose this place willy-nilly. What of this dagger? The up till now silent Mal asked. How will we know if we find it? It is unique in that it is crafted from the horn of a unicorn, Ulrich replied. It is also said that only one of good nature can ever touch it safely. And what exactly is its purpose? Asked the incredulous Fizz. To slay a god, Ulrich said. Crunk here doesn't have quite those high aspirations, Miranda said. He only wants to slay a dragon. I do not believe there to be a dragon in this mountain, Fizz stated flatly. Only these accursed little creatures. I disagree, Tinker, said Yaroslav, a muscular warrior with dark hair and eyes. Fizz looked at Mal and said, as Yaroslav continued, Did he just call me a tinker? Our comrades, Yaroslav said, gesturing towards Sigrun as he did so, did not die in this mountain to fight mere Drakan Chalovki. No, there is a dragon here, with untold treasure awaiting those that slay it. Addressing Miranda, Sigrun said, So tell us, why are you here? Johann, we know, was hired by you all as a guide. Would it perhaps be to slay a dragon like your friend Crunk? She said this with a hint of malice in her voice. She had become jealous of Miranda in the short time she knew her, mainly because she saw how Yaroslav looked at her. She longed for him to look at her that way. Was she not pretty enough? Or did he see in Miranda more skill in the arts of magic than she? Regardless, she did not like Miranda one bit and let it show with the air of interrogation in her question. My reasons are my own, Miranda responded coldly. Should we meet up with this dragon you are so convinced resides here, I shall hold my own, she added, completely oblivious to the intonations in Sigrun's voice and the meaning of the question, thinking rather that Sigrun questioned her ability in a battle with such a beast. Seemingly overlooked in the conversation was their scrawny, frail, elderly companion, Uran the Nimble. Felt left out, he spoke of his own accord. It is the treasure I seek, yes, the treasure. Why, once when I was younger, I stole into the lair of a dragon and took half his treasure whilst he was sleeping. Yes, I did. Well, I'm here to tell you he was not too happy when he woke up. No, he wasn't. He continued his story, although no one paid any mind to anything he was saying. They had all grown tired of his fanciful stories. Even Mal, who loved telling stories, could no longer stomach the rubbish that spat forth from Uran's forked tongue since they freed him from captivity over a week ago. They weren't quite sure of his profession, or even if he had any based on the past week. They allowed him to stay with them if for no other reason than to appease their consciences. The group left a series of tunnels and runes hewn out of the rock and entered a natural tunnel that gradually elevated. As they advanced only to a distance of about 50 feet, steps that seemed to have been hewn into the natural floor rose another 50 feet, widening at the crest and opening onto a ledge some 20 feet wide that circled around to the left and overlooked a vast cavern nearly 70 feet below. The view was breathtaking as the entirety of the cavern was illuminated by a reddish glow from some undetermined source. Covering the whole cavern floor, which must have been at least 200 feet in diameter had it been circular, was treasure. An enormous carpet of coins of all sorts glittered and gleamed a reflective red, giving the impression that they were scales of a dragon. Piled everywhere were mounds of these coins at various heights, with other types of treasure scattered and heaped among them. Full suits of individual pieces of armor and weapons of all sorts lay everywhere, the remnants of past intruders. Works of art and vessels of silver, gold, and platinum jutted up out of the sea of coins. Gems that sparkled with the brilliance of suns were sprinkled throughout, like thousands of torches alight across the surface of Mars. Miranda pulled out a glass prism and began peering through it, first at the cavern floor, then to the wall on her left. Ulrich retrieved a piece of lodestone from a pouch and began casting a spell, while the others fanned out on the ledge, readying weapons and preparing spells. Mal and Uran proceeded ahead of the rest, along the ledge which finally led down to the cavern floor at the far left. Miranda paused a quarter of the way along the ledge, appearing to have noticed something through her gem. Ulrich, after concentrating on the image of the dagger he had seen while scrying it back in Osnaburg, stopped and pointed in a direction on the cavern floor. Mal, he said, look for the dagger along that line, he motioned with his hand. Mal and Uran were first to reach the cavern floor, the others not too anxious to descend from off their perch despite the wealth of treasure that lay before them. Mal found walking over all the coins difficult, as they shifted with each step, causing him to tax his dexterity greatly. Finally, off in the distance, some 50 feet away, on the line Ulrich pointed, Mal saw what looked like a horn jutting out of the coinage. As Mal made towards it, Muran began another of his tales. "Oh, I am getting confused in my old age," he began. "I am always getting things mixed up." Miranda paused in a niche and reached out with a hand to feel the wall. Continuing to peer through the gem, she found the catch and opened the secret door. Taking a glance back, she stepped through the door and to what lay beyond. Mal reached the object he thought to be the horn. "Would someone shut up this raving lunatic?" he thought to himself as the words of Muran's ranting reverberated in his skull. "Yes," Muran was saying, "it wasn't a sleeping dragon I stole this huge treasure from." As Mal reached down to pluck what was indeed a unicorn horn out of the mass of coins, something long and scaly slithered under him between his legs. Up on the ledge, Fizz let out a gasp and uttered 3 words in disbelief and horror. "Oh my God!" "It was the dwarves of this mountain who now rest in eternal sleep, whose treasure I now have." With the utterance of those last words, Muran's transformation was complete. Mal snatched the horn from the coins as he was lifted up by what was the tail of a gargantuan red dragon. The tail whipped around, Mal holding on for dear life, and swept across the ledge, slamming into all those present. Ulrich was propelled through the secret entrance, Fizz up against the cavern wall. The others were knocked prone and stunned, except for Krunk, who was able to dodge the tail sweep at the last second by diving over the ledge. He tumbled down the 70-foot slope to the cavern floor, where he landed in the sea of coins. Fizz, still protected by his spell, was not stunned by the attack nor received any damage. Unfortunately for him, however, unlike those laying on the ledge, he stared straight into what was to be their fiery death as the ancient dragon unleashed its dragon breath upon all on the ledge. When the roaring flames subsided, what looked like many campfires lay across the ledge. Mal jumped off of the dragon's tail, which lay motionless near the cavern entrance during the inferno. He raced over to the blackened Fizz and grabbed his smoldering body, dragging it into the secret entrance while the dragon turned its attention to the one whose sole purpose was to slay it. Krunk rose to his feet and girded his loins, standing defiantly alone against the beast that he came to destroy. Inside the secret entrance was another vast cavern, however much unlike the one they just left. Here there were no coins, armor, or weapons, no treasure of any type. The entire cavern was filled by a light fog, nay, clouds. It's as if the cavern was high among the clouds in the sky. The cavern was illuminated by some unseen radiance, causing the clouds to give off a soft glow. Other than the heavenly mists, only one other object was present in the cavern, an immense throne, large enough to seat a giant. Miranda was already at the base of the throne, peering up. She had removed the tiara that had, up to this point, concealed her current condition. Her hideous transformation was nearly complete. That was something she could not allow to happen, would not allow. She cast the tiara to the cavern floor, where it disappeared in the clouds, knowing that regardless of what happened upon this throne, she would no longer need its magic. If it were not for her long blonde hair, Ulrich and Mal might have mistaken her for dragonkin and attacked her forthright. Instead, they just looked on in awe. The dragon wings on her back unfolded and spread out. She had never flown in this manner before, loath to even look at herself in a mirror, much less utilize her ever-changing form's abilities, so she was unsure of how to proceed. An image came into her mind. Was it from the dragon in the orb that she had banished to a pocket dimension, somehow intruding upon her thoughts as it had so often since she came into its possession? Perhaps it was from the celestial being that urged her to this place. Or, horrifyingly so, perhaps it was her own instincts, like a fledgling who takes flight for the first time. Whatever the case, she lifted off the ground and up to the seat on the throne, where she awkwardly landed. Why had she needed to go to this length to get up here? Normally she would have just cast a spell to fly or levitate. Was the gods assuring she would come to them with humility rather than one of power? As she contemplated this, she could feel magic flow through her. Unable to summon the orb from the cavern floor, she tried once again, this time the orb in the staff she created to hold it appearing in her outstretched hand. She sat there, her mind playing out the last few years, the vast power she received from the orb, the horrid transformation that her body was undertaking, and the promise that she had made to the orb's occupant. She not only wished for her own freedom from this curse, but that of the dragon within. As she thought these things, the entire cavern glowed with a pale blue. The orb began to hum, getting louder in intensity until finally it shattered in a million pieces with a brilliant blue flash. Suddenly appearing on the cavern floor and taking up much of the space afforded it was a great worm of golden hue. Ulrich and Mal were taken aback by its sudden appearance and immensity. Mal took a quick glance at the throne and froze. He reached a trembling hand to Ulrich to gain his attention. Ulrich looked at Mal and, seeing his transfixed gaze, looked at the throne also. Seated upon the throne was a transformed Miranda. Instead of the scant clothing that was usually her attire, she wore golden plate armor. Draped about her was a floor-length robe of red, her blonde hair flowing unbounded around its collar. In the hand which had held the staff that contained the orb was a different staff. It was deep green in color and was topped with what looked like a dragon claw clutching a golden orb. Protruding from her back were a pair of small yellow dragon wings. As Ulrich and Mal were lost in what they saw, they noticed movement behind Miranda on the throne's seat. A small head peered around from behind Miranda. Its face was yellow, the top of its head golden in color. They realized that the wings, in fact, belonged to this very young gold dragon rather than Miranda. She climbed on its back, and in an instant they were gone, vanished. So too was the great worm that Ulrich and Mal feared they would have to battle. "What now?" asked Mal, finally able to vocalize a thought. "We continue as planned," replied Ulrich, not noticing the body of Fizz lying on the ground next to Mal. "Things have changed a bit," Mal said, pulling the charred head of Fizz out of the clouds enough for Ulrich to see, before letting go of his still hot hand, causing Fizz to hit the cavern floor with a thud. "I liked Varel, but if the gods be willing, it's Fizz I'll be asking to return to the land of the living," Mal said. The realization of their situation hit Ulrich like a ton of bricks. If he were to gain the sword he so longed to have, Pedius would remain in the seven heavens. If he were to ask for Pedius's return, his hope of gaining the sword would be lost. As he was contemplating all of this, his thoughts were interrupted by Mal. "Here," Mal said, handing Ulrich the unicorn dagger. Mal then walked up to the throne and, turning to Ulrich, said, "Give me a boost." And that, my friends, is where we will end tonight's story. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. And make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell, and share to all your friends. Excuse me. Make sure you leave comments in the comment section, because I do love those. And being that I don't have a tip jar or a Patreon account, you can support this channel by purchasing my novel, The Book of Prophecies, which is what I've been reading to you guys. You can find links to the hardback, paperback, and ebook formats in the About section of this channel, as well as the About section of my Facebook page, James Richmond Author. So, this ends the readings for this year. For next reading will be next year, because this is right before New Year's. Yes, it is. So, I hope all of you have a wonderful New Year's. Stay safe and have tons of fun. And until next time, and as always, see you soon.